Okay, so this is Hugo, and this is a very special episode of the Traveling Image Makers podcast. As you can see, today we are on video, unless you're only listening to the audio, of course. And the reason why is because I'm here with two great friends. Let me introduce to you Matt, Brandon, and Pete DeMarco in no particular order. And if you're watching the video, I'm just here sitting with them. Maybe you want to tell us where we are now. Matt, you want
Well, we're in my home in Penang, Malaysia.
Yeah. Penang, Malaysia. And this is my first time in Malaysia, my first time in Penang. And I came explicitly decided to touch Penang on my trip of Southeast Asia this year because, I've got in touch with Matt and Pete for a long time. They both were guests on the podcast previously, so I said, well, where can I go this year to see a little bit more of Asia, which is a part of the world that I love. So I said, let's go to Malaysia. And who's there in Malaysia? Who's there in Penang in particular? And yeah, Matt and Pete.
The best guest you ever had.
Yeah.
Let's go
and first video guest.
Yeah, and meet. So we said, well, since we are here, we're also going to do a little video recording just to spice things up a little bit. So, yeah, as I said, we're here in Penang, but first I didn't do a proper introduction of my guests. Maybe Matt, you want to tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Well, of course, none of you are Malaysian, it shows, so you're here as experts or tourists or whatever. So, Matt, please introduce yourself. Sure. And maybe tell us why you decided to come to Penang. All
right. So I'm Matt, and I have been living in Malaysia now for 11 years, and I'm on the second home visa. So I'm a guest. Anyway, and so I picked Malaysia just because my wife and I wanted to live in Asia, wanted to raise our daughter in Asia. We were living in India, had lived in India for 13 years, and as much as I like India and like to visit India, 13 years was a long time to be there, and so we needed a break. We wanted to go to someplace different, and the short version of a long story is we basically did a bit of a survey of all these different places that we could live in choices, and Penang kept coming to the top as the top pick because people speak English here. They're welcoming to foreigners, and it's centrally located. The weather is in Fahrenheit, it's 85 to 90 degrees, 365 days out of the year. It's sunny half the day, rainy the other half. It's just an amazing climate, which even the best climate, actually we were talking, can get a little bit obnoxious after a while. You want 4 seasons sometimes,
right,
but
it's so hot.
Yeah, but it's a great place, and for what I do, especially when I first moved here, I was still doing a lot of work for nonprofits, and so I was traveling around the area a lot. Now I don't do as much of that, but I lead workshops and to India and other places, and travel for assignments, and it's just a nice centrally located place.
You're originally from what part of the U.S.?
I was a military brat, so I moved around a lot, but I grew up in Alaska, and then my high school and college years were in Kentucky, and then moved to Texas. And I call Texas, if there's a home in the U.S., it's Texas.
Yeah.
But I haven't lived in the U.S. for any amount of time in 23 years, something like that.
Do you ever go back there?
Yeah, we go back a lot. Yeah, I'm going back this Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What about you, Pete? You're from Florida originally, right?
No, actually, well, I'm wearing a Knowles shirt only because my brother, this is the university in Florida, and my brother and mother live down there. But I'm from Connecticut, about 2.5 hours north of New York City. But I moved to Asia in 2007, and I was living in South Korea for 10 years. teaching English at the university over there, and then I quit my job to pursue photography full time, and then I've been kind of traveling around Asia ever since then.
Cool.
Yeah.
And you love Penang.
Yeah, Penang is a really beautiful place, pretty much all for the same reasons that Matt said. It's really centrally located. You could travel all around Southeast Asia within 1 or 2 hours. You're in, Vietnam or Cambodia, Indonesia, Bali, wherever you want to go. So it's just, if you're interested in photography, there's just so much to photograph here.
And let's clarify a thing. I mean, we're talking about Penang, but the place we are actually in is called Georgetown. So
Sort of.
Yeah, this is the suburbs of Georgetown.
Yeah, it's a suburb of Georgetown.
I mean, Georgetown is the main city,
right.
The capital. Penang is a state, and it's also an island. So
half. People don't realize that. So Penang is the state that's divided basically into about a third of it is on the mainland, which is the peninsular Malaysia, and then about 2/3 is the island itself, and then Georgetown is the capital, and then we're on a suburb called Tanjung Tokong, and just 100 yards from the beach, not even
from the beach,
50 yards from the beach, yeah.
And so Georgetown is the capital, and especially in Georgetown there is a district, what they call it, the Old Town, or we visited that yesterday, and it's a great place. It's a UNESCO World Heritage site, so it has this area with no high rises there. It's all old buildings that are from the colonial era, because I think they had the British here, right? Until
the British founded it.
Yeah,
so the story, this is kind of fun. The story is that it was in the I don't know the exact dates, but in the 1700s, it was the British East India Company. They came over this area looking for trading areas and setting up outposts for trade, and they found Penang. It was basically a deserted island. It was all jungle, and legend, I don't know how true it is, but so Commander Light wanted this to settle on this island, and so he put gold coins in a cannon and shot it into what is now Georgetown, and said anybody that can find a coin can have it, and so they would clear the land looking for these gold coins. Now, again, I don't know if that's legend or if it's true or whatever, but they settled it, and then so the Brits actually settled it, and then I don't know if there was any sort of a native presence here at the time. I've heard that there wasn't. I heard there was nobody, but I don't know if that's, again, I'm just hearing all this secondhand. But one of the cool things is that over the years, Penang was sort of in competition with Singapore, and there was 3 cities that they wanted, that the British East India Company wanted to make as their major port city for the Straits of Malacca. They looked at Malacca, they looked at Singapore, and they looked at Penang, and it came down to Penang and Singapore, and Singapore won out as the main British port city, and so we're all sad about that to this day.
It was a free trade zone before. Penang, I think, was. It was like a free trade, like Singapore was.
Yeah. Well, the airport is still a free trade zone, from what I understand.
I think that there's also some kind of Portuguese influence here. I mean, the Portuguese were definitely in Malacca, right? It was like a Portuguese colony. But I mean, we were in the center of Georgetown yesterday, and we had those pastries which look a bit like the Portuguese pastéis de nata, if you know what I mean, which is those tarts filled with cream, custard, they make them with eggs. But they're very similar, so they reminded a little bit me of, looks like Lisbon, a little bit.
Right.
With the old buildings also. Kind of
I mean, it's classic, beautiful downtown area, just gorgeous. It's just really fun to walk through and photograph. Yeah.
So maybe Pete, what did we see yesterday when we were walking around the center of Georgetown? It's kind of a touristy place now, because there's a lot of European American tourists, Australians probably, young people, backpackers, hostels and bars and cafes and places where they sing, but there's still a lot of still traditional way of living, people working, doing their crafts and the markets and so on,
Yeah.
right?
Well, we saw so much. We walked all over the city. As you know, we left at like 9 in the morning
Yeah.
and finished, I think, in 5 in the afternoon.
Something like
Georgetown isn't very big, so you can see it in a day pretty much. But yeah, we went to see the noodle shop maker.
They
That's
make,
where you
they
had
make
those.
noodles
Yeah.
behind in a glass enclosure. You can see how they make noodles,
Yeah.
and then you order and then make them for you on the spot.
Right. We saw the wicker chair, the guy making the
Wicker
wicker
chair.
chairs, a guy who was repairing the trishaws.
Yeah.
What else? We saw the temple, the Sister Goddess of Mercy temple, right?
We saw the joss stick maker.
Just one interesting thing about this is a very multicultural and multi-ethnic place, right? Because aside from the Westerners, which are here like us as tourists or expats in the case of Matt, there are lots of cultures which are somewhat already settled here, if not native. So maybe you can explain what's the cultural and ethnic mix of this land.
Well, there's Chinese. This is the largest Chinese. What do you call it?
Presence in and then it's
Yeah.
a Chinese majority in Penang,
Right.
and no other state in Malaysia.
There's also, I think they're like 55% maybe or something.
60, actually.
60. Then
Chinese.
there's some Indian. I think about 10% are Indian. And then there are, of course, the Malays, the ethnic Malays who, yeah. So, but even though they're Indian and Chinese, their families have been here for generations. It's not like they're just suddenly came here. So
No,
they're Malaysian
they're
as well.
Malaysian, yes.
I think that's something that a lot of people don't
They're
realize.
not immigrants in the sense.
Right,
that
right.
I think the Indians were brought over by the British to work here, so they're more.
Well,
probably
the
more
Chinese-
recent.
The Chinese were as well. They also came
Yeah.
over to work in the shops, and I
Yeah.
think, and
Yeah, I
They-
actually
they
don't
had
know the
other
details
jobs,
of all
yeah.
that, but I know that a lot of the Hokkien are the Chinese, and they still speak Hokkien, which is actually a language apparently fading, and so that there's a push among the Hokkien community to keep that language
it's
alive
a
and
dialect,
things like that.
like
yeah.
a dialect of Chinese. Or,
And but there, and then there's an interesting culture that's called the Nonya culture, which is, I'm sure it's more complicated than this, but if you ask someone kind of what is it, they'd basically say it's a Malay-Chinese mix, and so but they have it's uniquely Malaysian, and I think even in some ways Penang, and it's got just a really interesting cultural heritage to it, and you go into these old houses and there's a mix of Chinese and colonial and Malay, and it's just, they're absolutely gorgeous. In fact, I think that's the place where you were staying.
Yeah.
The Blue Mansion is one of those.
Yeah, I just want to mention that. Sorry about the mention. We're staying at this place. It's called the Blue Mansion, or I think in Chinese it's called Chiang Fat Tse. I hope we're pronouncing it right. And this was originally a mansion of a rich Chinese trader's family or something like that. It was built, I don't even know when.
Gazillion years ago.
More than a century ago. And it's called the Blue Mansion because all the walls are painted this deep blue, which might come from flowers. I mean, they take these flowers, they have this indigo color, and they extract some paint for it, and they use it so the beautiful mansion, all decorated with those blue walls. It's really an amazing place. It's a hotel and it's also a museum, so you can go in and visit on a tour. Another thing I wanted to say is that, well, of course, those communities have been here for hundreds of years, so they're not immigrants anymore. They're part of the cultural mix of what makes this place so rich. And it's also the mix of religions, right? Because most of the Malays are Muslim, the Indians are Hindu, and the Chinese are Tao or other forms of Chinese religions and so on. And they
Actually-
all coexist quite peacefully, right?
right.
Yeah, relatively. There's actually Malays are, I mean, the Indians are and the Chinese are actually a little bit more diverse. You have quite a few Indians that are, I think, Mamak, or they're Muslim, and so you have but they're Muslim. They're not converted here by Malays. They were Muslims in India, and they came over and they retain their Muslim heritage. So it's whereas they're that Indian ethnic group, they're very different culture than the Hindu group that you'd see at Taipusam or something like that. And then there's a significant Christian population of Indians and Chinese as well. And then you have some, well, you might say Buddhist, but you're right. Most of the Chinese are what they call Taoist or Taoist.
Yeah, we also see a Buddhist temple, a Tibetan Buddhist temple here, and there are churches. There is just a Catholic church just beside our hotel here.
There's some Sikhs
and you
as
can
well.
See, I didn't see any Sikhs, but I'm sure there must be
No,
some. Then you got mosques, and maybe there's
Right.
even a synagogue. I don't know.
Actually, I think there may be.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think I've heard that there is. But yeah, you got just about everything. It's rich culture.
It's really rich, and so it's so great to come here and photograph. And another thing is that the people here are very friendly and very open to be photographed.
Yes.
Amazingly friendly.
They really love having their photograph taken. Or never object to it. They smile.
There's not really any restrictions either in the culture or by the government. Like, you can kind of walk around freely and photograph what you want. Even if you have a drone, you can fly your drone, and it's a pretty laid back place to photograph.
Yeah. And the center is great with all this big old, a bit dilapidated buildings. And Matt says we were talking yesterday. He loves the patina here in some of the places. They're cleaning it up a little bit, maybe in places, but still we've got those great doors, painted wooden doors with decorations. They make for a great backdrop if you see somebody nicely dressed or passing in front of them. It's a great place to shoot.
I hope you're going to splice in your pictures that you've been taking throughout this video, because you've got some really good ones of all these doors and kids standing in front of it.
I'm planning to shoot more doors. This is the last day that I'm here, so I'm going to try to shoot more doors and maybe do a little
So
collage.
If someone visits Penang, would you suggest they be here longer than 2 days?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we didn't know what to expect, so we just planned 2 days because looking at what's on the guides, you don't see a lot, right? Okay, monuments and buildings and temples and churches. Yeah, there's a few nice things, but if you're just here for that, maybe 2 days are okay. If you want to go deeper and start getting in touch and learning about all those cultures and so on, definitely a longer stay is warranted. I'm really wanting to come back here and spend more time, because it's such an amazing place. I expected it to be good, but I didn't expect it to be so great. And it's not just the city. And one thing that I'm doing, I'm just staying here in Georgetown, but the rest of the island is some great places. There's mountains, there's jungle. Maybe you can tell us a bit what else can we find here?
On the other side of the island, it's very quiet. It's like a countryside type place. It's very green and not as developed. There's really not much to do over there, although if you're into landscape photography, it's a good place to do a little astrophotography, although it's not the best destination in Asia to see the stars. There's a lot of light pollution, but there's also a national park up in the corner of the island, which is, I think, the smallest national park in Malaysia and maybe even the smallest in Asia. But it's just like a jungle, so you could walk through, and there's a few little beaches that you could go to. Those are kind of my two favorite parts. How about you?
Yeah, so the islands, if you look at the map, the island is set up, it looks like a turtle, kind of, like 4 legs and sort of a head knob and a tail knob. And Georgetown is up in the upper northeast side of the island. As you go around the island, the island has a mountain range that goes through it, but it's actually not in the center. It's more sort of at an angle off to the east side of it. And so the west side of the island coming down off the mountain, it gets sort of flat, and you have rice paddies and some jungle, but then long stretches of beaches, and then. But as Pete said, it's not developed for tourism. It's very kampong, which is a Malaysian word for village, so it's a very much village life. It has more of a Malay or Muslim presence on that side of the island than you have in Georgetown and Tanjung Tokong and Tanjung Bunga areas. Still very friendly, very welcoming people. There's a lot of farms, and you'll find that's where a lot of the durian is grown. Penang is known for having the best durian in, well, some people say in the world, and I personally think so. I'm a big durian fan, but so durian's a very disputed fruit, but it becomes quite a tourist attraction, and I guess we should talk about the fact that one of the big tourist attractions for Penang is food. Food. Penang is known as a food haven, heaven. All kinds of descriptions are out there for its food culture, but it's specifically known for sort of this hybrid mix of Chinese, Malaysian, and Indian food, and so it's and so you have this hawker stalls, street food. And people will fly. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
People fly from Hong Kong and other places in Asia 5 hours just for a weekend to eat in Penang, and then they'll fly back home.
So we'll talk more about food specifically, but first, before I forget, today is September 4. I don't know when we're going to publish this, so when you're watching or listening to this, it will be later into September. But today, when we're recording this, is September 4. And I arrived here 2 days ago, that was September the 2nd, which was kind of a mistake. I could not really arrange my trip differently, but there is a great event that happens every year, which is the Georgetown Festival here, which ends on September the 2nd. This year, the last day was September the 2nd, so I completely missed it. And you also told me that the durian season by this time of the year is already over. So maybe it's worth coming a little bit earlier than that to get that. We still managed to get the night of the 2nd of September was the last day of the Georgetown Festival. It was also the day of the Penang International Food Festival, and part of it is the Penang Street Food Festival. So there was a street or a couple of streets in the center of the city where they had these stalls out, and you can just walk. They closed it to traffic and get street food with lots of people around and music playing and so on. So that's a great event, probably a best time of the year to come here, at least for events and things like that.
And you had a chance to learn how to make it.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And speaking of food, let's just give a shout out to Cooking with Alu. What's Cooking with Alu?
You tell him. I haven't taken the course yet.
Okay. I will. So Alu is just Matt's wife, who has a cooking school, right? And I'm here with my wife, and we took just this morning. We took this class with Alu. We went to a local market. We did our shopping for groceries, and noodles, vegetables, and so on. And then we came to their place to do a little cooking. We learned to make spring rolls, and we learned to make char kway teow. Char kway teow.
Yeah, very good.
Which is kind of noodles with vegetables, egg, and you can add in a little bit of maybe if you like bacon or
the pork
shrimp.
sausage.
Pork sausage, and use oyster sauce and soy sauce to spice it up a little bit. You can add some chili sauce, lots of vegetables, bean sprouts, and so on. Did I forget some ingredients? Probably, but yeah, shrimps.
Yeah. So you made it.
So
now you're going to open your hawker stall now.
Yeah, I can open my hawker stall in Milan, Italy, and sell Malay food and see how it goes.
Yeah, good.
I want to add one thing about the festivals.
Yeah.
So since there's these three main religions here, you have so many religious festivals
Oh
here.
my goodness, yeah.
All the time, like Thai Pusam is a big one. Right in August, I think actually the best time to visit Penang is the month of August. Like you said, there's the Georgetown Festival, which is by far the biggest festival in Penang. But they also have some photography, not workshops, but exhibits during the Georgetown Festival. But if you're a photographer, you really want to come here in August because there's the Obscura Camera Festival or Photography Festival, which is the last 2 weeks of August, about more or less the last 2 weeks. So if you come here in August, or especially the last 2 weeks, you could catch both festivals. And the Obscura Festival is fantastic.
And there's in the middle of August, generally, although it has to do with the moon, but you also have a Taoist festival called Hungry Ghost, which goes for a whole month.
And you saw that, we saw that yesterday,
Yeah.
them setting up the little mini temple with the god there.
Makeshift temple, and they're going to burn the statue of the Angry Ghost again after we leave. So just
So if you're coming here to Penang, you don't have to come here in August, but you should, if you're into shooting, festivals and that type of thing. There's many religious festivals, so I'd just look on the calendar and plan your trip to coincide with either one of the city or island festivals or one of the religious festivals, because they're great to photograph. They're really incredible.
I think the Chinese New Year is really big here, is it?
Yes, somewhat.
I mean, it's pretty. I mean, it's. I think it's very colorful here. I don't know compared to China. I've never gone there during the Chinese New Year, but I mean, it's certainly there's a lot of lanterns around here. There's a lot of lion dances and dragon dance and different things, and so
there's also a big temple called Kek Lok Si, and it's filled with the lanterns, but they shoot fireworks from it for one night. And I actually did a YouTube video about it, so I'll send that to you so you could link to it in the show notes.
I will definitely so people can see it. Oh yeah, another thing about the Chinese New Year, I was told about that by my friend Sui Ho, who is native from Penang, but now she lives in San Francisco. But she says she always comes back to visit family for the New Year here. So.